Hey, how you doing? Welcome to another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen, the podcast with me, Steve Sims. Today, I've got a buddy of mine. I've known the guy for 6-7 years, John Ruhlin. He sold those tacky knives. I'm going to throw that out there straight away. And so many other people did. But he realized he wasn't selling a knife. He was selling a relationship. And he was actually enforcing it, growing it. And then he started working with the inner circle so that they became an advocate for the people he really wanted to get to. I've often been a great believer, what business are you in? John realized very early on he wasn't in the business of supplying knives. He was in the relationship trade. Listen to John Ruhlin. A lot of you have probably already heard of him from the best-selling book, Giftology. Listen to the way he's working and apply it to your business and your relationships. Enjoy the episode. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Steve, this has been a long time coming, brother.
It's been too long. I was trying to think how long we've known each other for. What has it been, like 6-7 years?
I was going to say 8 or 9. I mean, it's Mastermind Talks was probably the first time that we connected. I would think that Jason's one of his first gatherings.
Wow, up in Toronto. That is going back. That's back in vintage. Well, look, that's cool. Look, since that time, the world's changed a lot for the pair of us. But you actually have dominated the industry that I'm not really sure was a real industry beforehand. You really focused on the supreme art of gifting to focus on relationships. And then you wrote a phenomenal book on it, Giftology. I've got the book. I've read the book. I love the concept and thought behind it, but give people a bit of an idea of what you were that made you to discover this element.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people that are successful in business grow up poor or not in the country club set. Like, you grew up construction and, just do it bouncing, doing whatever you had to do to scrap and scrape. And I grew up on a farm milking goats every morning before I went to school. So I was a kid that was awkward, smelling like, crap because I, smelled like a goat. And I didn't like being poor. And so I was going to get good grades to make mom proud, go be a doctor or a lawyer. That's what I thought everybody that made money in at least my little town of 300 people. And my life changed because of a mentor. A lot of us changed because of a mastermind, a group, a coach, a mentor, an advisor. Mine was this law firm owner who is this radically generous dude who like he was a rainmaker. Referrals, deal flow, access, you name it, came to him. And he was also radically generous. Also happened to be my girlfriend's dad. So I went and interned with Cutco, the crazy knife company, to pay for med school. My fourth appointment was to attorney Paul. And I was hoping he'd pray to God he'd have mercy on me and maybe buy some, hunting knives that were a couple $100s a piece for all of his clients that were dudes that owned like hunting lodges and insurance companies and financial advisor firms. And they're all men, right? They're $1 million like small businesses. And he changed my life forever. He's like, John, I want to order 100 of the $200 a piece paring knives. Wow. And I'm like, why would you give a bunch of dudes that are $1 million, $1 billion CEOs, VPs, whatever, like a kitchen tool? That's weird, Paul. And he said, John, the reason I have more referrals, deal flow, access, loyalty is I found out a simple truth 35 years ago when I started the firm. And that's if you show up for the family in business, everything else changes. Everything else seems to take care of itself. So I'm 20. I want to be Paul because he's 60 and this like rainmaker, 3 daughters. Everybody just loved him. So instead of buying beer in college, I'm like investing hundreds of dollars per gift, sometimes thousands of dollars a gift to get meetings with insurance companies. And I'm in my dorm room writing these notes, carve out 5 minutes for me. I promise you, worth your time. And we started to land 6-figure deals in knives, not because of the knives. It was like teaching people how to like 100x their referrals and access and whatever else. And so Cutco's worked with about 2 million sales reps in 70 years globally. And we became their #1 rep in the history of the company out of 2 million. And I put med school on hold. I was like, nobody's teaching people how to use, that's not swag, not trinkets, not stupid stuff like that. Like true gifts. Like if you want to grow any business, whether it's technology or construction, like speaking, it all comes down to relationships. And if you show up for those relationships in uncommon ways, you get all the results that you want, the outcomes. But most people like give stupid stuff like wine and gift cards and fruit baskets and, vests with the freaking logo the size of a softball on it. And they wonder why they're not getting referrals or deal flow. Nobody cares. And it's because they don't understand that there's really an art and a science to engaging humans. And you know it because you've done these insane experiences for people. But a lot of times people think, oh, I'll just check the box and do stuff at Christmas. So the last 22 years, we've been helping companies outsource that. But it all started back as a farm kid just trying to scrap and get to med school.
Do you know, it makes me laugh because a lot of the people look at things and they go, well, I could never make a lot of money out of that. The answer is really, you could never make a lot of money out of it because a lot of people are. You took the carved, engraved knife world, which, and I'm going to be rude, was that trinket, was that little kind of like swaggy little thing. And you turned it into, as you quite openly said, a science. Now, when did you first start realizing that, hang on a minute, I can take this outside of the knife? Because you literally have taken it leaps and fogs. I'm not going to give you stories, but how have you been able to see that, hang on, there's other ways of doing it? And where have you been able to take this this concept of giftology?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we've taken it in every industry. I mean, I started, with the knives, and even to this day, we still do millions of dollars in the knives. And people are like, really, the stupid knives? I'm like, well, last time I checked, people still break bread. They still host at their family. They still like, whether you're a janitor or whether you're the CEO, like there's certain things that are common amongst humans. And so the way that I got introduced into the pro sports realm was we started working with NASCAR. Well, NASCAR came back to, I had a seed corn company contact, and he got recruited away to be a sponsor. And I sent him knives every quarter for like 5 years. And eventually he's like, you know what? You need to come into NASCAR with Roush Fenway, all these sponsors of CMO, Pepsi, and huge companies. Well, why did he think of us every single day? Well, he had a stupid knife set staring at him in the face, and his wife became a huge fan of us, and she became the internal sales advocate. Well, then once I got into NASCAR, one of the executives left and went to the Miami Dolphins. Well, I sent his assistant some knives and then some leather goods and some wine tools, not asking for anything. And so I was the most liked, trusted, and top of mind person in a lot of these circles. And so many people think, well, I'm in this category. I need to do golf because everybody loves golf. And I started to come at it from a different angle and say, do they have an assistant? Do they have a spouse? Do they have kids? Like we call it the inner circle. And I started to land. And then once we were in, guess what? All of those people had the exact same problem and challenge. They had a good product or service, but they weren't top of mind. They were liked, but they maybe weren't loved. And there was a bunch of competitors all doing the same dinners and golf and ball game tickets and suites and $1 million sponsorships. And here came this little like country bumpkin kid that was like saying, hey, instead of going in the front door, why don't we come in the back door? And instead of investing $5 million in like one conference, like some of these big companies do, I would say, how about you pair off 5% of that budget? And why don't we go take care of this person's spouse and this person's kids and this person's assistant or chief of staff? Or if I wanted, I eventually got to the point where I wanted to land speaking stages. Most people take care of bureaus. I started to take care of the event planner and the assistant event planner and the AV team and all these other people that were oftentimes like treated like redheaded stepchild. I would be like, those are the people that make you look good or bad, or like they're doing all the heavy lifting and the hard work. And my original mentor, Paul, was the guy who always like, not out of like manipulation, he took care of the receptionist the same level or even more than their CEO. And so I started to realize that like the science of this was just treating humans like humans and taking care of the people that weren't being taken care of, and then coaching and strategizing for companies to do this. So whether it was taking care of 10 relationships or 10,000 relationships, everybody had an inner circle, and almost everybody followed the same playbook and did all these events at a level 10, and then they did their gifting at like a McDonald's level. And so all I had to do was beat the McDonald's level. They were doing that at a 1 or a 2. I'd take them up to a 5. And like we just landed, a couple of years ago, we landed, Vaynerchuk's company, VaynerMedia. Today I had a call with the CMO, and they had their top 100 relationships. Guess what we did? We did knives. We did $500 to $1,000 per person of knives. The CMOs of Fortune 50 companies are texting the CMO of Vayner and saying on a Saturday at 8 a.m. saying, we've never had anybody send us something like this that was so personal and unique and a little out of they were raving about it. It's the same playbook I developed as a college kid. But because we have the book now and stories, incredible, all the things, like we've spoken on the same stages. Now all of a sudden people are taking it seriously because we have like this methodology and backing to us. But a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like it's been around for thousands of years. We just, like put a different spotlight and a spin on it and added like a little bit of like sizzle to it, and it's still working.
So I don't want people to wait until the end. You can still grab the book, Giftology. Where's the best place for you to grab that? Still just Amazon or to your website?
Yeah, so you'll appreciate this. So, well, two things. One is we have 5 different versions of the book from $10 to $3,000. The one that's on Amazon is $25. We have a $100 version, a $300 version, a $3,000 version. If somebody wants to email me, I'm happy to send them one of those 3 versions. Because to me, like there's 30,000 books published every week, new titles on Amazon. We've sold 120,000 copies of our book as a self-published book because we've turned it into something that people want to talk about. So when I published the book, I had made these $300 versions. Everybody thought I was insane. But I sent them off to Vaynerchuk and Seth Godin and John Maxwell and all these guys that I respected. And but I didn't ask them for anything. I just said, thank you for the wisdom you poured out. And they were either clients or people I respected. And a lot of those guys ended up, guess what? They brought me onto their show or their stage or whatever, because most people are used to what? A $20 book. And when you show up with a $200 book or a $2,000 book, people freak out. Why? Because it's like Seth Godin's concept. It's a purple cow. So you can get the normal hardcover, which we spent 300% more just to even make our hardcover because I wanted to stand out. But even before you go buy the book, our whole playbook that we walk, whether it's a solopreneur or the Cubs, we have a whole like recipe and a strategy that we walk every client through. And it's like, who are you taking care of? Like the who you're taking care of is more important than the what. They can go download your tribe can download the entire playbook. Go to giftologyplan.com, and everything we walk a client through, we give our entire playbook away because it's not hard to go do this for 2. If you have 2 relationships, you don't need to hire an agency to do all your gifting for you. The challenge is if you have 200 relationships, that's where people start scaling thoughtfulness and they start cutting corners. They don't handwrite the notes. They don't personalize it. They just start like outsourcing it to an assistant. But if somebody wants to go steal our entire playbook, they can do it without even going and buying the book. Like I'd rather go get people being more generous and going and getting more deals and getting the 1,000x return versus, selling an extra book on Amazon. You and I both know we don't make don't make a ton of money on the book sales. It's all of the after effect that really is like what opens doors for us.
And that's giftologyplan.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, giftologyplan.com.
All right, I wanted to make sure that was out there. Now, what is different between a $25 book and a $3,000 book? Is one laced in gold or something?
Yeah, there's somebody that jumps out and starts dancing and whatever else. That's a book that you'd put together. So there's no difference. The material is the same, and that's the ironic part. Like, right? Like, oftentimes, what's the difference between a $20 bottle of vodka and a $200 bottle of vodka? It's the packaging.
Yeah.
Now, the internal, both of them have been distilled 7 times, but if one is endorsed by The Rock or P. Diddy or whatever, and it's packaged a certain way and it's in a certain shelf at the club, you perceive it to be different based upon all of the window dressing and the packaging. People judge a book by its cover. So the actual material itself is no different. What's different is how it's packaged. So the $100 version comes in a custom leather bag in a linen box, and you open, you're like, damn, this is the nicest book I've ever seen. The $300 has a video screen built in it. It's a personal video from me talking to you or to whoever it's going to. People feel special. Why? Because that doesn't scale very well. The 1-to-1. And then the $3,000 version it's in a strong box. And a strong box is if you went 300 years ago on a royal ship or on a train, it's the box that's the size of a bread box that would carry the valuables, the gold, the jewelry, safe. It has cast iron on the outside. So we took that and blew it up to be 8 times larger. So I just did a gift, the $10,000 knife set to Garrett White. You probably know Garrett, Wake Up Warrior guy. So it came in the $3,000 wood box with a video speaking into his life, talking about 7 generations from now, these knives that all were 80 different quotes of his and his wife's engraved on these tools. And so when he got that, he sent me a video of him watching it. And he's like, dude, I heard you talk about this crazy $10,000 knife set. And now I didn't understand it. Now I freaking understand it. So he didn't say freaking. He's like, dude, it's amazing. He drops more F-bombs than Vaynerchuk. But the packaging sets it up for saying, it's like when you get a Tiffany's box, women freak out. Why? Because of the little blue box.
Yeah.
They already are excited what's going to be inside. It could be a spoon. It could be a paper clip. Like they have a $1,600 paper clip, but you're excited because of the Tiffany's box. So I realized if I wanted to stand out from the other 30,000 books every week, $3,000 in a book sounds stupid, but people will spend $3,000 on bottle service and nobody remembers the next day. And so it's really just shifting the frame of, as a bootstrapped entrepreneur, I'm like, I don't have a $3 million budget to launch this book. I have a $30,000 budget. And where am I going to invest my 30 grand? I want to compete with a $3 million guy, but I have to be more thoughtful and more creative. And so that's what we did with our book.
Yeah, I remember actually, I was very fortunate. I spoke at Harvard with the head of Tiffany, and he said, we don't sell jewelry, we sell excitement and anticipation in a little blue box, because that little blue box could carry a $2 million diamond, or it could supply a paperweight, but it's still the exact same blue box. Now, there's a lot of people that are scared of looking after the people around the person you want because they perceive those as the gatekeepers. You focus on those people. You go to there with the byproduct being you now have an inner sanctum of their people talking you up. When did you first discover that that was the way to go?
Early on with Paul, I saw how he showed up for relationships, and he always would shake the hand of the spouse. A lot of times this, in patriarchal society, oil and gas and finance, insurance, a lot of these are male dominated industries, right? And a lot of times it's the dude, patriarch, talking to another dude. And I saw Paul respected and treated the spouse, oftentimes a wife, or the assistant, oftentimes a woman. He treated them with the same level of respect as the dude, the guy that was the decision maker or making the money or whatever. And so I realized early on, and I realized it even more so when I got married 13 years ago. If somebody wants to get to me, they got to spend a lot of money on my hobby because everybody knows what my hobbies are. But if somebody gets to my wife or my 4 girls or my assistant, I'm going to travel with you. I'm likely to travel to your event more frequently. I'm likely to do business with you. I'm likely to return your phone call faster if you take care of the inner circle. Why? Because everybody's coming at me. But if they get my wife to like you, she's the number one salesperson in my life. If she likes you, I like you, period, end of story. And if my girls like you, another level of depth. If my assistant likes you, you're going to get on my calendar. And so I realized, when I got married, that was a whole nother level. When I travel away, and a lot of times people do this, they take people on trips and whatever else, you're pissing off the spouses. Why? Because they're even if it's business, they're viewing that as a boondoggle. Trip to Pebble Beach, hunting trip. It's all an excuse to go off and do nonsense. So if I can get the spouse, the assistant, the kids, the pets, the people around the people, and if I can help my clients do that, now all of a sudden, the spouses, and I've had this happen where the spouses of our clients are pushing the guy or gal out the door because they're nobody's ever treated us with respect, treated us oh, this is hard to hold down the fort. Oh yeah, this is a hassle for you to leave to this conference or speak on this stage or do this summit or retreat or hunting trip or whatever. And so I learned from my mentor, and then it became really crystal clear when I got married that if you want your business to grow, get internal champions, and the spouse and the assistant are 2 of those people that if you get on your team or you help your clients get on the team, it's game over.
Now you talk about Paul with a great deal of fondness and respect. But you mentioned he was an older gentleman at the time. Is he still around?
He is. I sent him handwritten notes. I gave him accolades and acknowledgments in the book. And he's like, John, I didn't do anything for you. I just opened a couple doors. I'm like, Paul, you believed in me. Yeah, he's in his 80s now. He's still around. Unfortunately, the relationship with his daughter crashed and burned. So I ended up not marrying his daughter, even though I had the ring, and that's an hour long over a double bourbon story. But I still to this day still talk to when I launched the book, I had it back in his hometown area to give him homage because a lot of the things that I learned and still to this day do, I learned from him 22 years ago.
Wow. So look, you like all entrepreneurs, we recognize opportunity that is blind to others. You saw a Kirko knife not as a gift, you saw it as a connection and as a tool to amplify a relationship. So it's
a delivery vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a delivery vehicle for an emotion. Nobody cares about gifts. My love language isn't even gifts. It's words of affirmation, and I'm an introvert. But what I realized is that like anything you're going to send to a client, really anything you're going to do for a client, an employee that's at 6 figures or above, which most people are dealing with people that are 6 figures and above, as leaders, directors, VPs, CEOs, all the people we want to influence are making, they can go buy the trip, they can go buy the dinner, they can go buy the knife or the Tiffany's or the whatever. So unless you have a story and meaning and catch and surprise and delight them in a way that makes them feel as a human being an emotional connection to you, then you're just sending stuff. You might as well just go order a bunch of crap off Amazon or check the box at Christmas. The reason what we do worked wasn't because of the knife. It was because I engraved the family name or the spouse's name or the note, that handwritten note that talked about legacy and breaking bread and future Garrett White generations using these tools, great grandkids, and being reminded of the legacy that him and Danielle started. So it was the story, it was the meaning. All these things, these physical devices were just like if you sent somebody a Rolex and they already have a Rolex, you better have a damn good story of what that Rolex means, or engrave it with a Bible verse or their mission statement or something that makes them say, this is special and irreplaceable. And that's what we realize. That's how I can send the same thing to 10,000 people for a client and have people coming with tears, is because the handwritten note and all the little things. That's why people will duplicate things. And they're like, Chad, I did giftology and it didn't work. I ordered a bunch of knives. And I'm like, did you follow the recipe to a T? And they're like, well, we did giftology-ish. And I'm like, you dumb mofo. Like, if you go, I don't care if you spent 12 hours making lobster bisque. If as you're serving it, a fly flies into it and that's how you serve it. It doesn't matter that you put all this energy and effort and money and resources. That's why people will like slam logos on Tiffany's or slam logo on a Cutco or slam logo on a Rolex. And nobody, like Domino's did that with Rolexes. And people traded the Domino's Rolexes in, even if they worked for Domino's. So it wasn't about the thing. It was about how it made that person feel. And that's where people F it up all the time. They think, I sent $1 million worth of things to my relationships, my employees. And I'm like, it's not about the thing. It's going to end up at Goodwill if you don't put the energy and effort into the meaning and the story and the note and all the other things. Otherwise, you're just like sending crap that's going to end up at Goodwill. That's a waste of resources. And oftentimes, when you put your logo on it, for instance, you're actually, it's a manipulation. You're trying to turn that other person into a billboard for them. So you oftentimes are spending money to guilt them or piss them off or frustrate them because they're like, I don't want to wear your Lululemon with your logo on it. Like, Lululemon, nice. Lululemon with giftology on it? Hell no.
All right, so
right?
so you've recognized all of this. You released a book. The book's done incredibly well. What's the next chapter for John?
Well, I think the next chapter is, we realized, we wrote the book titled Giftology, and people are like, I don't care about gifts. And so, the kind of the idea of return on relationship. Like I've seen where like, we both know Cameron Harold.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to hire him as a sales rep, it cost me $2 million and he'd still say no. Like he doesn't need my money. Like, but if you can inspire relationships to go out and be what I call actively loyal. Like we all have people that are like, hey, who's your plumber? You'll tell them. But we also have people that we love and will go out of our way to refer them in boardroom meetings. Like Chasm, who's your coachee. Like he shouts you from every state. Like he is actively loyal. He does more for you than $100,000, $200,000 sales rep. Why? And he's paying you. You've developed a sense of relationship and loyalty and value. And like there's a connection, deep emotional connection there, where he's willing to go out and sell on your behalf, even though he's paying you. That's the power of return on relationship. Now, if everybody had 100, Camerons or 100 Steve Sims that wanted to see that brand or business win, it's game over. Because that's the difference between like, I'm loyal and I'm sitting on my hands as an employee or client. Like if you have employees that are recruiting for you to come to your team, you have real loyalty. They're bringing their family and friends to come work at your company. And so the next book, the next iteration around this is not just about the gifts. It's about making people feel human and seen and like they matter. And that sounds woo-woo, but we all know that when somebody's in our corner, they'll run through walls for us. They'll open more doors. They'll send referrals 100 times over. And that level of loyalty and that level of value and that level of relationship is what makes every business rise and fall, whether we realize it or not. And so the next book, really, that's what our agency is. It's a relationship agency because nobody gives two rips about gifts, but we all care about those relationships, and how we show up in uncommon ways for those relationships is what produces like real net profit, real revenue, real deal flow, real access. And that's what we all want.
Something twisted me years ago, and I was watching the movie. You know, when we're watching a movie or we're at a seminar or we're at an event and someone says something and it just stops us. And like for the next 10 minutes, everything else around the planet's just gone. I remember watching the movie, The Founder, the story of McDonald's. And I was watching that. That was a great movie for both good and bad reasons. And there was one part in there that really shook me when the guy said, I don't think you know what business you are in. And that caused me to reflect as to what business I was in. I was in the business of connections and having conversations with powerful people. I just had to make them more interesting for their cocktail stories in order to do that. You're supplying gifts and techniques and strategies because you're not in the gifting business. You're in the relationship business.
1,000%.
Now, you've got an agency that actually does this. So whenever I see agencies, like we've got a branding agency, we should be unemployed because you'd think, oh, everyone can brand. You're in a gifting agency. You should think, well, anyone could buy a gift, but you're very successful at it. So obviously people are really shit at it.
It really, I mean, it's a $20 billion industry of what you would put us into the sandbox of. Swag, gift cards, trinkets, promotions. Nobody is moved to tears when you give them a polo shirt with your logo on it. Nobody's moved to tears when you give them a case of wine or a fruit basket from Harry and David or an Amazon gift card or any of that. So the industry as a whole, everybody thinks they're a 7 out of 10 on gifting. Oh yeah, I'm good at it. I'm generous. You know, they do the thing at Christmas. We don't allow clients to send anything at Christmas. And people are like, you're in the gifting business. I want to send Christmas gifts. And I'm like, are you in the relationship business or transaction? And I don't care if somebody sells toilet paper, they will say they're in the relationship business. Like nobody says we're the cheapest, we're the worst, we're a commodity. I don't care if you sell cars, real estate, like everybody thinks they're a value adder. And I'm like, if you give gifts at Christmas, if you give gifts after a referral's done, what did you just turn that relationship into? A transactional, obligatory, you do this, you get this. It's Christmas, I have to do this out of obligation or expectation. If you show up for your wife only on anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas, do you earn brownie points? No, those are table stakes times. Like if I show up on Valentine's Day for my wife, she's like, cool. But if I show up on a random Tuesday and say, hey, I got you the 4 Seasons booked and I got the 4 girls, I get 100 times more brownie points because I showed up because I wanted to. So at the end of the day, we're teaching people how to show up in uncommon ways for relationships that matter, employees, clients, even like I send nicer gifts and our best clients send nicer gifts to the people they're spending millions of dollars with. Like OC Tanner is an $800 million company. They buy more Rolexes than anybody else in the US. When Rolex comes to town, they drop thousands of dollars on Rolex. Why? Because they don't have a business without Rolex. Their suppliers are just as important as their customers. And so when we start to do a 360-degree view of somebody, of a business, I don't care if you're doing $2 million or $20 billion, we all have blind spots in relationships that if they didn't exist, if the event planners, if the stages, if the suppliers, our insurance company, the paper supplier, we all have all of these people that if they didn't exist, we wouldn't have a business. And oftentimes those relationships are taken for granted. Oh, they already like me. And I'm like, great. Do they love you? Do they feel appreciated and valued? If stuff hits the fan and you need them to show up on a weekend, will they do it? And oftentimes the answer is you beat the crap out of them as a supplier or whoever they are, or an employee, and they're just collecting a paycheck. So if you can show up for those relationships because you wanted to and show them that it's not transactional, that you're doing this because you chose to, the relationship flourishes, whether that's your spouse or your kids or your parents or your clients or your employees. So really at the end of the day, like I'm just teaching people how to be thoughtful and kind and generous, but to do it strategically so that it doesn't feel woo-woo. It's not a like, oh, I want to be nice this year. It's no, I want 100 times more referrals this year. I want my employees to recruit their family and friends to work for us. if I do that, the monetary benefit, in some cases, like Cameron's a great example, the return on relationship value is 50x for me. It's like 25 grand invested in him in gifts have produced 7 figures. Show me a part in your business where you can invest $1 and get $50 back out. You're not going to get it from Facebook ads.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it from anything else other than relationships. Return on relationship completely destroys every other investment that we can make in our business, in every industry. And so the more I teach that, the more people come back and say, I need some help with that. But oftentimes they take our playbook and they go do it. And I'm like high-fiving them. Some of the ideas that we incorporate into our business have come from our clients going out and doing giftology at the level that we're talking about.
So that's at giftologyplan.com. Now, your agency, what's the name of your agency?
Giftology Group. It's
Giftology Group.
Yeah. And so, good.
And how's the best way for people to follow you and track you and stalk you?
I would say on Instagram is probably where we have the biggest following, out of 30, 40,000. And we highlight when we're doing a crazy $50,000 art piece for a Vaynerchuk or Ed Milet or these different people. Like that's where we're like showing some of the highlight reels of like, you don't have to drop 50 grand or 5 grand, but if you are going to do something for a really valuable relationship, whether it's 2 people or 2,000 people, we highlight some of those things at John Ruhlin on Instagram.
Oh, look, we've known each other for a year, and I'm just proud of the way that you've actually constantly grown and disrupted and actually owned this industry. So, John, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We're going to put the links below. Is there anywhere else that anyone should follow you or know of anything you're up to?
No, man, it's people will ask me to speak on different topics, over the world. And hey, will you speak on leadership? Hey, will you speak on social media? I'm like, I'm a one-trick pony. I will teach people how to show up in uncommon ways for their relationships and melt their face off. If you want me to speak on anything other than that, I got guys like Steve Sims or Justin Donald or Matthew Kelly. Like I am in my one little narrow lane, and I don't venture outside of that because I'm no good at much else.
Well, you've dominated it. John, thank you very much for joining us and sharing some of your wisdom with the Art of Making Things Happen crowd. Thank you very much.
Thanks, brother.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode of the Art of Making Things Happen podcast. And remember, these are done for you. If you like them, subscribe, share them around. But if you don't like them, send me an email to ask@stevedsims.com and you can tell me what I need to do to make this the most dynamic podcast you listen to. Anyway, make sure whatever you learned from the last podcast, you actually do something with. Without action, it's just a bunch of people blowing air. Have a good time. Until next time. Bye.